Let's talk about a war that shaped our entire modern world. It lasted for 45 years, it spanned the entire globe, but it was a war fought without any traditional battles. It was a war of shadows, of secrets, and it was fought under the constant, terrifying threat of complete and total destruction. And that right there, that's really the heart of it. The Cold War wasn't about massive armies clashing head-on. Nope. Instead, it was this relentless, planet-wide struggle for the future. A tug-of-war between the world's two new superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. Okay, so how did we even get here? Well, you have to picture the world right after World War II. Out of all that devastation, two nations rose to the top, stronger than anyone else. The problem? They had completely opposite ideas about how the world should work. And that set the stage for a new, much colder kind of conflict. When you boil it all down, this was a war of ideas. On one side, you had the United States, all about capitalism and democracy. And on the other, the Soviet Union, pushing for communism and the control of a single party. Both sides were absolutely convinced that their way was the only right way for humanity to move forward. As the Soviets started to lock down their control over Eastern Europe, the British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, gave this famous and frankly chilling warning. And this Iron Curtain, it wasn't just a turn of phrase. It became a very real thing, a hard border, both physical and ideological, that literally split the continent of Europe in two. So, if they couldn't risk fighting a direct hot war, what did they do? Well, they competed. They competed in two of the most high-stakes races you can possibly imagine. The race to build bigger, deadlier weapons, and the race to conquer outer space. And just look at how fast this all happened. In 1945, the US drops the first atomic bomb. Just 4 years later, boom, the Soviets have one too. Then the US builds the hydrogen bomb, which is way, way more powerful. And, you guessed it, the Soviets have their own just 1 year later. With every single step, the danger for the entire planet just ratcheted up and up. And you have to understand, this wasn't some abstract threat. We're talking about thousands of nuclear missiles, on both sides, pointed right at each other, ready to launch at a moment's notice. For decades, the entire world lived with the knowledge that one little mistake, one miscalculation, could literally end civilization. The competition wasn't just here on Earth either. Oh no, it went to space. In 1957, the Soviets just stunned the world by launching Sputnik, the very first satellite. I mean, this was a massive deal, a huge propaganda win. It sent a shockwave through the United States and directly led to the creation of NASA and that all-out sprint to land a man on the moon. So you have all this tension, right? All these weapons, this intense rivalry. It wasn't just a theory. It all came terrifyingly close to boiling over, bringing the entire world to what was, without a doubt, the single most dangerous moment of the entire Cold War. 13. For 13 nail-biting days in October 1962, the world literally held its breath. We call it the Cuban Missile Crisis. And people were genuinely asking this question. I mean, this wasn't hyperbole. This was it. This was the closest we have ever come to a full-blown global nuclear war. So what happened? Well, the Soviets secretly put nuclear missiles in Cuba. And Cuba, you gotta remember, is only 90 miles off the coast of Florida. When American spy planes spotted them, the world just froze. President Kennedy went on TV, demanded the missiles be removed, and set up a naval blockade, basically daring the Soviets to make the next move. Now, while the superpowers pulled back from that brink and were always careful to avoid a direct war with each other, that doesn't mean the fighting stopped. It just moved. It went underground into the shadows and was fought through other people. In places like Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, all over the world really, incredibly brutal wars were fought. American and Soviet soldiers never shot at each other directly, but their governments poured money, weapons, and advisors into opposite sides of these conflicts. These were the proxy wars, and millions of people died in them. And at the very same time, that other war was raging, the war in the shadows. This was the golden age of the spy. Agents from America's CIA and the Soviet Union's KGB became these silent warriors in a global game of cat and mouse, full of secret missions, double agents, and stolen technology. You know, for decades, it seemed like this standoff was just the way the world was, permanent. And then, with a speed that shocked almost everyone, the whole thing started to come apart. The massive Soviet system just began to crumble from the inside out. By the late 80s, the Soviet Union was in deep trouble. Its economy was a wreck, and people were demanding freedom. The big moment, the one everyone remembers, came in 1989, when the Berlin Wall, the ultimate symbol of that Iron Curtain, was literally torn down. Just 2 years after that, in 1991, the Soviet Union itself officially voted to dissolve. It was just over. And just like that, the world was a completely different place. New countries appeared on the map, Europe was whole again. And with its great rival gone, the United States was left standing as the world's only superpower. But here's the thing you absolutely have to remember. The Cold War is over. The Soviet Union is gone. But its most dangerous creation? That never went away. Thousands of nuclear weapons that were built during that standoff are still here. They're a permanent reminder of just how close we came to the edge. And that leaves us with a pretty sobering final thought, doesn't it? The massive conflict that defined an entire century is history, but the weapons it created are not. So, you have to ask yourself, the Cold War ended, but did the danger ever really go away?